Welcome back, everybody, to our HR and Leadership Coffee Talk. So we have a great program today to answering your questions about women at work, women in the workforce. This is a special honorarium for Mother's Day, and whether you're a mother or not, we're going to talk about women in the workplace, some of the effects from COVID, and what we can expect in the future as employers. So introduction, again, I'm Daya Nay from a professional coach, a certified mediator. I have 16 years of legal practice, and a lot of that was in as a contract general counsel. Edgar?
Hi, everyone. I'm Edgar Jatu. I'm an HR consultant and nonprofit professional, problem solver, certified mediator, and workers' rights advocate.
Great. So just a quick little summary of women at work, past, present, and future. So as far as higher education, so this is the years 1970 to 2018. So a lot more women with higher education are in the workforce. So labor quadrupled for college degree women. Women are now more likely to work full-time and year-round. So previously it was part-time work, just like teaching or tutoring, and now it is full-time careers for women as of 2018. And the earnings are 62% of what men earned, and in 1979, and now 81% in 2018. Every year there's something called Equal Pay Day, and it falls sometime in April, and that's the representation of women starting to get paid in the work year. And of course, more baby boomers. We're all talking about the fact the baby boomers are retiring. Large number of women from the baby boomer generation are retiring as we speak. So 32%, 43% of women work in healthcare, non-governmental education, leisure, and other services such as finance, insurance, and real estate. And that's going to be indicative when we start talking about like the COVID situation and what's going on in the workforce worldwide in COVID. So Edgar, we had this very shocking headline that came out in December and in January. What do you think is causing this?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. A lot of the industries that have been affected by COVID are dominated by women. So think, domestic work, certain types of healthcare fields, service industry especially. And so because those industries will have to shut down for significant periods of time, or there's less demand for those services, unfortunately, women have been laid off in droves because of that. Also, there are situations where, even if women are working, they're making significantly less than their male counterparts, which also affects their ability to stay afloat, particularly during these hard times. And in some instances, also, women have voluntarily left the workforce because of increased family demands at home, whether it's having to ensure that children are homeschooled or are taken care of while quarantining at home, or because maybe a life partner or spouse is making more money than they are because of the structural um, um, pay equity gap that we're still dealing with. Women are deciding to stay home so that the other person can make more money. So I think there's a number out there that women have lost over $1 billion in income because of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is the staying home. They have to take care of children. Older people were not able to go into assisted living or have caretakers. And yeah, I just wish they'd one guy, you know, so it didn't have to be 100%. It was just it was a very shocking statistic, and it really I think opened up our eyes to make this such a key topic.
Yeah.
So what if I'm an employer? What can I do to keep more women in my workforce and encourage more women to apply?
So I will start with the second question. Certainly you want to expand your hiring pool, right? And so that might mean that you look out for affinity groups that target women in your industry, or that women are likely to join, to get them to apply. But the more important thing is that once if you do hire uh, women as to join your workplace, you want to ensure that you have policies and procedures in place to ensure that they are able to be successful at work. One thing I know that some states have adapted is not asking for salary history during the hiring process, because usually what would happen is, because women historically have gotten paid less than men doing the same work, if you bring up salary history, then what would happen is you still maintain the structural pay gap between men and women, because you're negotiating against someone who has a historically lower salary history than potentially a male candidate for that same role. I would say that it's probably a good idea, even if you're in a place that does not have that ban, to not do it, because you would help counteract this structural discrimination. But there are states now like Maryland and DC where you shouldn't be asking for someone's prior salary until a certain point in the hiring process. And also in terms of how do you keep women in the workplace, I would say and particularly given what we've seen with COVID, uh, one of the more important things is adapting policies that allow not only women but all employees, for that matter, to have more work-life balance when it comes to wanting to start a family or maintain a family. Um, having to deal with family responsibilities like kids, for example. Um, and just being more flexible with how people can do their work and be successful in advance. Uh, for a very long time, a lot of employers have follow this one model where you have to work long hours, you have to show you're committed to the company, which you can still do, even if you also have to balance making sure that kids are picked up from daycare, or that that parents are spending more time with their kids. So I think adopting those policies would better help keep women in the workforce. Uh, in some industries, historically and notoriously, women leave the industry because they can't keep up. At a certain point, they want to start families. They want to be home, for their children, and they can't meet the demands at work, which is unfair. So changing that so to allow women to be able to do both would be a good step in the right direction.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yes, definitely. So, you brought up the mom
Yeah.
thing, and since this is Mother's Day week, happy Mother's Day to those of you who are listening to it real time. So, what do I need to do for my working mothers?
Well, I think a bit of creativity would be helpful here, right? And you've seen this happen a lot. It's funny when people are forced to have to make changes. It's incredible what they can do, and they realize that it's not that bad. And a lot of full-time working mothers have had to work from home, right? Not only because of COVID, and maybe because they can't go to work site, but they have to be home for their kids. And I've seen a lot of employers decide that, okay, well, maybe we just have to restructure the way we think about the workday, right? And maybe we have to change the way we think about what it means to be productive in during the workday, right? And as many parents, I'm sure, can attest to, they've had to have a schedule where they wake up super early to check email, then they take care of the kids and make their kids situated with their virtual schooling, and then they may have a pocket of time to do some more work, and then it's nap time or dinner time, and they have to get back and or play time, and they have to juggle that, and then they work at night, right? And so as an employer, that might be the only way you'll get the best out of your working mothers, if you allow them the flexibility to be on and off during the day, right? And restructure what it means to have a productive day. So maybe there are times where you just know that um, certain employees will not be available for email or for meetings, and it needs to be done differently. And the thing is that in many situations, I've heard from working parents, particularly mothers, that they've never been busier or more productive, right? And it's not just a linear 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 that they're doing, and so I think there's a way to do it. And even when we do go back into the workplace, I hope that uh, employers have learned a lesson from COVID, in that, or at least a silver lining, that you know you can do things differently and still get the same results. It does not, it may not look what you're, it not be what you're accustomed to or used to, but it can be done.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. That's going to be one of the positives that came out of all this. I worked with a woman a couple years ago in my coaching career, and she transferred to another division of her company. She had to be off early on Fridays to beat the traffic home
Yeah.
so that she could relieve her nanny. And there was just no way that she could do it any other way. And the people she worked for loved her, but they wouldn't give, they would not give. And so she was able to transfer to another division in the company who would work that out with her. And of course, her original boss wanted her back. And they're like, oh my God, we can't do without you. And well, it's sad that it came to that you had to go through all that kind of restructuring instead of just a little bit of give.
Yeah. And oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was going to add, I believe that, and this can kind of segue into what we're this next topic about, best practices for on maternity leave. But we need more leave in this country. We have been very stingy when it comes to paid time off, and things are getting better, particularly because a lot of states or have adopted more liberal leave policies to address anything dealing with a sick leave, or just more personal time, or giving working parents more time off to handle things with their kids. But we're not where we need to be. A lot of other rich, wealthy nations have very liberal leave policies, and they're not hurting as an economy. And so that has to change, and not only would it benefit women tremendously, but it'll benefit everyone. I think everyone deserves to have time out of the workplace.
Mhm. Yeah, I saw a great joke. I guess it was on Facebook, and it was like European out of the office email response and American out of the office email response. And one says, I'm on summer holiday, write me back in September. And the American one is, okay, I'm going in for kidney surgery. I'll be gone for 2 hours. And I'll be checking my, I'll be checking my email by phone. It's like, really? But I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but not really.
Yeah, it's we all know someone that who would do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So back to our moms. What are we seeing in maternity leave policies and best practices?
Yeah, so for maternity leave, the good news is that there are laws in place, particularly at the federal level, that cover maternity leave. And so, for those of you who are not aware, but you should be, you have to give women time off for maternity leave, whether it's paid or unpaid, and you have to give them their job back or something equivalent at the same pay. So there is job protection built into the law, and many local governments have something similar on the books as well. Um, and also, because pregnancy is considered also a medical condition, the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, also protects pregnant women if they have any complications stemming from their pregnancy, whether during or after, that might require reasonable accommodation or additional time off. So there are some things built in the system to help women on maternity leave. I think that there's still an issue in terms of, is it enough time, and there's still this stigma attached to uh, women who are pregnant, you know, um, where like this trope of that, they're less productive, or they'll never be the same, or they're hurting the company, and it's very tragic that you still have these stigmas that are a very real problem for many women, and it's still very rampant, even in places where you would never think, because of the image that these organizations portray in the public, that this would be a problem, but it still is.
Mhm.
And so, uh, I would argue that, the protections in place could be better. I think there should be even more time for women to recuperate from pregnancy, particularly if it's been a tough one on them physically, or emotionally. Um, and and here's the thing, for organizations, you don't just have to do bare minimum, right? You could go above and beyond if you so desire. The law allows for that. So if it's something that you're truly committed to, you can offer more time off if you so desire, or find ways to allow, women who are recuperating, um, or women to have more time at home with their newborn, to work from home
Mhm.
for a set period of time until they're ready to come back to the office, or it can be a hybrid situation where they spend time at home and they can come into the office on a set schedule. Again, it can be done. You just have to there has to be a willingness to do it, and just know that you can still get productivity, out of your employees, even if you adopt these creative ways of, redefining, the work relationship in the workplace.
Yeah, definitely space for creativity is for both. And then I think it's interesting too, or I've noticed in my career, especially in the coaching work, that taking time off for pregnancy or starting your family kind of coincides, for better or for worse, with like the most strategic career development part of your life. So you think if you've gone to professional school and you're getting out at 24, 25, 26, and so 5 years to 7 years into your business practice is your most critical time in setting what you're going to make for the longevity of your career. And that's when you're starting a family. So both men and women are thinking about that, on how am I going to be 110% dedicated to my work, and of course 110% my family. Starting your family, creating a human being is a job in and of itself. So just kind of what I encourage with completely maintaining well-being and focus on your family is finding a way to agree to work out something creative with your employer to stay in the loop. So I think don't do client matters, but do team trainings, do continuing education as they're offered. Now, like if you can go into the office, take your kids. Say, hey, this is my kid. This is the newest member of XYZ company. Just joking, keeping a sense of humor, saying that we're team players, and kind of staying in that loop. I know people are like, take time off as complete time off. I totally agree. And it's something that you really ought to have open and candid conversations with everyone on your team. If somebody's coming in to temporarily replace you, like how is that going to work? What kind of style do they have? Are they going to be a suitable? Like have them come in before you go on leave, have them stay on for a while after you come back from leave, and then like when you're ready to go back, like you need to really be ready to go back because you can't second guess it. You can't unjump into the ocean. So really make sure that you're 100% ready and you have your bases covered. So we talked a little bit earlier about the pay gap. So like what can I do? What can I do as an employer about the pay gap?
I think for starters, equal pay for equal work.
Yeah.
If everyone's working the same type of job and has the same job duties, just be getting the same pay. And that just takes effort to make sure you're doing that. And even if you want to reward people for being high producers, you have to do it in a way that's equitable, right? And so even if that means creating some sort of schedule um, or system to make sure that you're being fair and judicious in how you are, handling compensation, is probably for the better. So I think that's a good starting point. Um, and also, uh, I would say that it's important, to keep in mind that you know it's a very serious thing, this pay gap. Um, it costs a lot more now to live in this country than it has ever been, and it's only increasing. And so if you're thinking about someone who is a woman who's in a single family household and she's the, the, the main breadwinner, her earning potential to support her family is being um, stunted because of this pay gap issue. So even more reason that you have to be very judicious about the way you're handling compensation. So whether it's equal pay for equal work, whether it's not, or getting rid of the practice of asking for salary history during the early stages, particularly the early stages or even late stages of the hiring process. I would even say that uh, one thing I've done for clients is I'll get a list of all the employees, I'll look at the pay across the board, and we'll make some decisions. Say, look, this doesn't seem right. Whether it's based on gender or race or what have you, we have to, we have to fix this because I'm seeing some disparities in the pay. Particularly where there should not be a disparity. And so it takes you know, it takes a little bit of self-awareness because no one wants to be seen as a bigot or a racist uh, or someone who is a discriminator. It's a very uncomfortable position to be in, right? To feel that you've done something that most people in this country consider very heinous. But I would say that in some instances, it's just really an honest mistake that can be fixed.
Mhm.
You know, and that's the most important thing is being self-aware about it and just making sure you do everything you can to ensure that's not a problem at your organization.
Mhm. Yeah, and we were talking about like the legacy. So if it was at one time, what were you making at your last company, and would you be willing to accept that working here? There's really no room to go up if the legacy company was either or not, either intentionally or unintentionally treating women or people of color at a different pay rate. Um, it's just a legacy. It's a legacy
Yeah.
issue a lot of times. So it's not something that you as an employer actually intended to do. You just asked them what they would take or what they were being paid, and then it just continued on.
Yeah.
So I love that people are not asking anymore. Something I always encourage my candidates to do is to do a lot of homework on what they should be getting paid at their new position. Salary.com, Bureau of
Mhm.
Labor Statistics, interviewing other people if they're friends or second degree friends, what they're ask them. I mean, they don't have to tell you, but you could get a range, and then go in with a range and put the lowest amount you'll accept at, or the highest, what
Yeah.
you want, like what you're shooting for, put that at the low end and see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, they could say, "Hey, you know what? That's really not what we had budgeted for the position," and then that's when you could open the, well, what did you have budgeted? And then you'll know if you're a good fit.
Yeah. And I think you know, and believe it or not, I still think this happens subconsciously and sometimes not. But this notion that men should get paid more because they're the sole breadwinners of their families, right? Or whatever other sort of archaic tropes that have been used to justify paying men more.
Mhm,
And I still think it kind of happens subconsciously because people, it's kind of ingrained, right? It's hard to break these societal ways of thinking, right? And or even it's just the idea that women's work is not as valuable, right? Particularly if women are forced to be in certain industries, right? And so you know, I mean, when we talk the pay gap, it's not just the equal pay for equal work, but it's also just the idea that women are put in certain industries and that work is not valued. Whether it's domestic work, whether it's certain types of healthcare functions, restaurant industry work.
mhm,
Um, a lot of work is not valued, by society or by employers, right? And so, and in many instances, because a lot of the women who are in those positions are not only women, but they're of a different race, right? And they're, women and of color, right? That adds a second element or third element to the gap and the discrepancy and the injustice and the quite frankly the unjustness of it all, right? Because the work is not valued, and also some employers think they can take advantage,
Yeah.
right? So they'll depress the wages or the compensation because they think they can get away with it, and that doesn't help at all, right? And that's why when people see that number that women get paid or a certain percent, a certain amount of cents on the dollar as compared to men, it's encompassing the entire economy in some instances, right? And that women's work is now as valued across the board, and that's where you have this discrepancy. So on a micro level at your company, what you can do is just make sure that as a starting point, equal pay for equal work, but also, uh, to work on, not falling into these um, ways of thinking about what men should be paid and the value of women's work and what they should get paid for their work. Right. I think that's probably the most important thing. And I think once people start doing that, and being more just, then you'll probably see that number increase more over time.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it has. COVID has made a decent setback, but we keep striving to move forward. So this is another area where, as an employer, you can support women, keeping women in your workforce or bringing into your workforce. And so mentorship programs, I'm seeing more and more of those, and that's amazing. And then certain industries are just now getting women at the top level tiers. So I come from a legal and a construction background. And so there weren't many people when I was starting out, many women in the roles that I wanted to be in roles with. And Edgar, you mentioned affinity groups earlier, and I couldn't agree more about like trade associations, things like Women in Tech, the Women's Bar Association, the National Association of Women in Construction, places where you can find a mentor. And I would encourage women to be very proactive about, if your company doesn't have a mentor for you, find one for yourself. And then for your employers, pay for their dues and pay for their lunches. If they join one of these associations and organizations, I mean, not only are you getting networking benefit and kudos from it, like free advertising, but they're really finding a way to be supported in work. And just like that little bit of, hey, my company pays for me to be here, so they do value women in the workforce, and I'm getting supported from other women in this type of industry to keep up with trends and get the mentorship, get the things that I need to become a better professional.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think one of probably the biggest benefits is that you hear about what other companies are doing and best practices, right?
Hmm.
And employees talk all the time, and they talk about their places of work, and things they like and dislike, and and if women are going, to these meetings and talking to other women, and they're hearing that, oh, my company does this now, that allows me to have better work-life balance, or they're doing this and now there are more women in leadership, they'll take that back to your company and give you those ideas, and if you want to stay competitive, you're going to probably try to follow these ideas, right? Because you know also remember that if people don't like where they're working, they will leave you.
Yes.
They will go and find a better deal somewhere else. um, that's going to happen if you don't try to stay competitive and ensure that people feel that you're valuing them and that you're investing in them.
Hmm. Yes, it's a huge investment when there's turnover in your company, and I think maybe that's one of the fears I see in companies not wanting to sponsor somebody to go to a networking organization or a trade organization, but across the board, the loyalty factor will be a lot higher. And if they do see a better offer, you're going to get consulted and presented with, hey, let's make some changes in this organization so that I can stay, versus, hey, I got offered something and I'm off to take it. So yeah. Um, and no talk on women in the workforce could possibly be complete, sadly, without talking about sexual harassment. So 1/3 of 90,000 complaints in 2015 included harassment or harassment, some pronunciation. So 75% of all workplace harassment incidents go unreported. So what can I do to stop sexual harassment?
Well, the the best thing that you can do as an employer is set a culture where that it's never accepted, and that anytime someone complains or if you learn that the bad behavior is occurring, that you immediately nip in the bud and don't let it happen or get worse. That's probably the best thing you can do. And so whether it's having a written policy around uh, confirming that you do not tolerate sexual harassment or any form of harassment for that matter, and establishing a complaint process that works, is a good starting point. Uh, and even having a point person to boot, even better. Um, Also, know, having employees know that an investigation will be done and be done timely as part of the complaint process is also a good thing. And then more importantly, making sure that everyone is trained on how to identify sexual harassment, how to deal with it. Whether it's your managers or your employee or your frontline employees, they all need to know what sexual harassment means. And in this day and age, it can mean many different things, right? It used to just mean, inappropriate jokes, whether it's directed at a person or just said out in the open. So think about like someone making a joke of a sexual nature, just the mere fact that someone makes that joke and someone feels uncomfortable, even if that joke's not directed at them, can still be sexual harassment, right? So that's what used to happen, right? It's the jokes, it's inappropriate touching, asking someone out on a date inappropriately, pornographic pictures, in break rooms, that was prevalent. But now it's text messages, it's social media stalking, it's I'm hearing now that Zoom calls, it's happening on Zoom calls, where bosses may ask a female employee to wear a certain type of outfit for a Zoom call. It's happening in restaurants now. Women are being told to take down their masks so that men can judge if they're cute
Mm,
enough to tip them, which is awful because most restaurant workers rely on tips,
yes.
um, right? And so it's taken on many different forms, right? And people thought that harassment claims will decrease because of COVID, but it has either stayed the same or gotten worse,
Hmm.
because there are just other ways to do it, which is very unfortunate, right? And so the most important thing that you can do as an employee is to report it, and report it quickly. And the most important thing that an employer can do is to take those complaints seriously, investigate them, go through your complaint process, and do whatever necessary to make sure it doesn't happen. And that's probably the most important thing you can do. And just making sure that as a that there's an organizational culture where it's not accepted, and that people are trained on how to identify and address it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I am seeing that as well. It seems to be on the rise, and just more creative and subtle forms of sexual harassment. And again, like we have we've had some other coffee talks in the past about having crucial conversations, how to behave on Zoom. So I encourage all of our listeners and viewers to check out our archives. So Edgar, do you have some parting thoughts to tie all this up in a bow today?
Yeah, very much a continuing conversation as we are learning more about how we can do better as a society when it comes to the way we treat women in the workplace and the safety nets we offer to working mothers and to working women in general. Uh, and I'll also say that there has to be a major paradigm shift in terms of, how we think about the responsibilities that women have, right? And there has been a push, to have more parental leave for men, for example, so men
Mhm.
can spend more time and old and there are men who are single fathers who have to also uh, get home, to take care of their children or have family responsibilities. And so I think there has to be a societal paradigm shift as to what we think about um, what it means to be a family person or have family responsibilities, and that the burden shouldn't just be shouldered by women, right? And so while right now we have to address that because that has been the societal norm and we have to address that head on, I think I would hope that companies and society will also think about, well, it should not only benefit women, it should also benefit everyone.
Mhm.
Everyone should have the responsibility of taking care of their families or having more time at home. And so I think that would be helpful as well in ensuring that we have a more just workplace for women, especially.
Yeah, great. Yes, we didn't mean to exclude anyone else, but we did want to dedicate this to women in the workforce in honor of Mother's Day. We did bring up a lot of things that were very high level, and we'd love to offer to our HR and leadership community for your dedicated listening, 15 minutes of our time, both one or both of each of us, to actually talk about what's going on in your organization, or if you're an employee, to see where you can lead an initiative or something actually that's personally going on for you at work. So we do have a QR code which leads to a site on my webpage that has our old videos as well as Edgar's booking link, and of course my booking link because it's my site. So please talk to us more. We're here to serve the community, and until next time, thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.